Hello everyone and welcome to the latest This Week in the Field with the Handyman in the Field. I'm Dustin and today we are talking about the past week. We got back from vacation. If you listened to the last video that we had in this series, we talked about the last week that I had, and then I had a week of vacation and I got back, and that's this week. So we're getting back to the in the groove of things. That vacation that I was on is probably the last vacation I'm going to be on in a while. I'm also needing to try to figure out a variety of different things. So I'm going to be posing some questions to you guys out there who may have, maybe in the same scenario I am in. And I'd like to get some advice, but let's dive into the jobs first for the week. I had a variety of different things that came up. There's a couple of different things that related to some requests that came in before I was on vacation. I have bigger jobs, more time-consuming jobs. I say bigger, but they're not always bigger. They're just more time-consuming jobs that I have to get, taken care of too. So this week was more about trying to knock out some of the smaller things that have been on my plate for a little while. Some of these required materials that I was waiting on. Some of them were requiring, honestly, there wasn't really any. There was a couple of materials, but the biggest ones were, there's been some storms in our area recently, and there's been a lot of things that have popped up because of those storms. So I've been trying to fit in as many of those smaller jobs as I can, but also trying to plan accordingly so that I'm not using the helpers that I have in a way that is detrimental to the business because it doesn't serve any purpose to have them. So for the most part, they are working with me. I'm trying to break it up where they're not all working with me unless we're on one of those larger projects or the time-consuming projects. So because of that, there's limitations on what can be accomplished. But at the same time, like I said, I'm trying to knock out some of the smaller things that typically can get done in less than a day, so that way I can get some of these other things done and focus on the larger projects that we can knock out before I essentially lose them for them going back to school. One of the things that I was thinking about that I need to figure out here very soon is I'm at the point where I have to figure out some way of getting another employee. Somebody who can be a skilled tech to go out there and do some of the same stuff that I'm doing. If I can have them go out and do some of these things that are relatively easy, it's hard to balance this along with some of the bigger projects. That would be ideal. But then the bigger projects, once the helpers are not around, those bigger projects can keep that tech busy. The problem is that if I don't start thinking about onboarding somebody now, I'm going to run into a problem here very shortly because I only have these helpers for roughly just over a month. And then they go back to school and I'm back to solo owner operator situation that I already was in. So if I don't start looking at trying to find somebody to hire, I'm going to be in a problem. At the same time, I need to make sure that I can take on that added cost of someone coming in addition to having the added expenses that come with just running, essentially two sets of equipment. There's a lot of things. I don't have an insane amount of cash reserves to basically just go get a van, build it out for somebody. I'm also in a scenario where I don't have a lot of ideal scenarios. And the helpers basically were just buying me time so that I could take on some additional work over the summer. But I'm in a kind of a predicament where I'm seeing the writing on the wall. I am not getting any slower. There is no business that we're having to actually take some business and turn it away because it's just not feasible, or it's not profitable is not the right word. It's probably more of it's not efficient for us to take on the certain jobs. Other things, the more simple things that we can tack on and do along with a variety of other things, we're still taking those. But when it comes to certain projects, I find myself actually telling people that we are not going to be able to do it, or it's going to take an extended amount of time to be able to actually take on that work. Now, if they're flexible enough to wait, it's not a problem. But right now, I think I have there's at least three major projects that I have on my books right now. And that means that they are estimates sent, estimates approved. And those projects involve us doing the majority of the work. There's an additional project that's a pretty larger project that I am just project managing, that it's a subcontractor who's doing the large amount of work for that. But that's 4 projects. I have one other large project that I'm in the middle of quoting, which that will involve subcontractor and us doing some of the work. So there's a bunch that will need to be done with that. In addition to that, I have at least 2 other relatively larger projects that need to get estimated out too. They're just not as high of priority. And then at the same time, there's been a couple of other developments where there's a commercial property that one of my existing customers wants me to take a look at, although I don't have any idea what the work is, so we'll have to figure that out. And then there's also another owner / property manager. He owns the building and manages it himself, but he just approached us for a 12-unit building that he wants us to do ongoing maintenance for as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, and I love the fact that we've got plenty of business coming in, but what concerns me is that accelerant of growth and then it not being sustainable. The last thing I want is to have to start turning away stuff because we can't do it, and then that is a detriment to our future. So it's a matter of juggling all of these pieces. If you've been through this, you probably know what I'm talking about. You know, everybody always talks about in the trades, you've got the valleys and the mountains. You know, you get the spikes of work, and then you get the really low points where like you could be slow for a while. Relatively speaking, I have not been slow for an extended amount of time. Now, that's not to say that I can't figure out ways of taking a vacation here or there, or there's not ways of me making sure that I still am able to do what I need to do. I built my business in the purpose of not having to work nonstop. I don't want to be in a scenario where I'm working 12-hour days. I understand that that's some people. That's just not me or my business. If I had employees working for me, I don't want them working, super long hours. I want them working normal hours, enjoying life, wanting to work for the company instead of dreading having to go to work. So, the thing is, it's all a balance, and this is the real version of what happens when you're growing. So just keep that in mind. If you're at the point that I'm at and you're trying to figure out how you're going to, juggle all of the work that's coming in, leave a comment down below. Let me know what's going on with you guys. It's a trip. It's awesome when you see your business being successful, bringing in larger amounts of money than you previously did. It's awesome when you start seeing, more leads coming in and you're having to do barely anything to get those leads. And it's awesome when all that happens, but it's also very stressful. So I'm sure there's some of you guys out there who are listening to this and thinking, yep, I've been there, done that. Love to hear your advice. So leave those comments below. But let's get into some of the work before we talk about some of the other stuff related to the business. So Monday we had, there was a job, previous existing customer. He reached out to me before I was on vacation about work at his house and 2 of his rental properties. So we did all 3 houses this week, but I'm going to go through them individually. So Monday was the first one, there was a report. He doesn't give me great information when he tells me what their problem is. He typically gives me like the most basic information. So this information that I had to go off of was a leak. There was a leak, a plumbing leak. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know how bad it was, other than it could wait, because when he came to me, it was like 2 weeks before I was going to be able to get over there. So long story short, show up. It was a P-trap underneath a bathroom sink in a vanity. It was pretty straightforward. The pipes themselves were corroded. There was also really bad blockage in the pipe of hair and makeup. So my guess is that the blockage just accelerated the corrosion of the metal pipe, the metal P-trap, and the wall tube. So all I basically did was just take out the old one, put in a new one, and then we also put in a new drain that has a, click drain, or the one where you push down. I've been doing those a lot lately. I've been suggesting to customers, especially ones that have the clogs, to get those because they're easier to clear and there's less chance of corrosion and things like that when it comes to that. So did that, pretty straightforward. That was $180, which included materials, very, very quick. That I did by myself. After that, I met two of the employees at the next place. This customer was the one that a couple weeks ago there was a piece of glass that had shattered. I had got the piece of glass replaced for him using a local glass shop to do to put new glass in the window frame. He wanted me to come back out to basically do a perimeter inspection to see if there was any major issues with holes where mice could get in. Apparently he's had some mice issues in the past, not past, but in the past he's had mice issues. Specifically, the last time he had the mice issues was in the winter. He's typically not around in the winter because him and his wife are snowbirds. They go down south for the winter, but he has seen mice. So he wanted me to see if I could find anything that was glaring. The only thing that I could find was a spot near the foundation. It looked like they had dug a hole in the dirt and then created a nest with leaves and a variety of other things, but there wasn't any holes necessarily in the actual foundation that I found. We searched the entire property. This is it's a single family home residence, but they have, the way they're structured is that there's two technically connecting to each other, two homes connected to each other. So it's like a duplex, but they're not this, like in my mind, when I think of a duplex, I think of like very small buildings. It's not that at all. And it's much larger than a townhome. These are, they've got a full basement and they have a second floor to these houses as well. So it's just the way they're designed is that there's two per. But anyway, so we took care of that. The other thing he had was a dimmer switch that needed to be replaced. He had an issue where the light was not working, and there's like a reading light that him and his wife have their own lazy boy chairs, and they have these reading lights right next to the chairs. So one of them was not working. The dimmer was definitely bad, but the thing that's unfortunate is the type of light fixture it is requires those old style prong light bulbs, the real small ones, where you like basically push it up inside of there and then the contact points get it. There's a couple problems with those bulbs, in my opinion. Those bulbs get insanely hot. Even for just being on for a very short amount of time, the glass on those is so hot. Part of it is because the filament is so close to the glass. But the other issue is that where the prongs actually plug up inside of the light fixture, I've seen this fail a couple of times where the contact points, they're not super reliable. It's not like they're locking in place. It's just literally you're just stabbing the two prongs in and then hoping that it's connected. I've seen times where you put a brand new bulb in and it's not working. You just jiggle the bulb and all of a sudden it works. And it's because it's not a great design. He did end up messaging me after we were there and said that the light was having issues where it was occasionally working, and I suggested then maybe we just go the route of replacing the light. He thinks there was a short in the wire itself. I don't know that it's a short in the wire. I think it's just the fixture and the design of those bulbs. But the dimmer, when I was there, everything worked as it was. It wasn't even turning on initially. And the problem is, it's unfortunate when you have an electrical issue where you have multiple things fail at the same time. The bad dimmer could have actually put more stress on the fixture, which then ultimately caused issues with the fixture. There's no way of knowing for sure. You replace the parts that you know you need to be replaced and then hope that everything else is going to continue to work. And if it doesn't, then you got to replace those parts too. So that said, that job was relatively quick. It was $230. After that, the two employees and myself went to our next location, which was a customer that I did some work for. I think it was back in May. And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even remember what all of the work was that I actually did. But it's also the same job that we got rained out of a couple weeks ago as well, where there was a window well that we were supposed to do, and we got rained out because it was just downpouring that day. So that said, the two things we were doing this time was we were clearing out the window well, figuring out a drainage solution when it came to the window well, and then there was a bathroom exhaust fan that needed to be replaced as well. So the bathroom exhaust fan, for the most part, went pretty straightforward. The only thing that was a little bit of a hiccup was that the hole itself was slightly bigger than the new fan. That was not a concern to the customer because the customer was more concerned about it just working correctly. The old fan was super loud in comparison to the new one. Everything worked, exactly the way he wanted it to. It's just he's going to have to do a little bit of some drywall touch-ups to try to just get the edge of the hole to not be so big, and then obviously some paint touch-ups. But that was something that he knew going into it just because of how this specific fan, the old fan was. The old fan was a round one, the new one was a square one. Now, that really didn't make a huge difference. If he had a circular one, it would have covered the hole. And I'm actually wondering if the hole was oversized to begin with, and then that plate just ended up magically covering it up before, and that's just how it always was. So that was pretty straightforward. The issue with the window well is this. So he had said that in the past he had water coming up in this window well. The window itself is glass blocks, but the concern, of course, is that the more the water gets up, it's going to put pressure on the actual mortar joints for those glass blocks. So he ended up getting a sump pump, or I guess it was just a pump that he had attached to a hose, and every time it would rain, he would just drop it into the pit, and it would just pump the water out away from the actual window well. The issue is that obviously, well, there's a couple of things. He's looking to sell the house. He doesn't want that to come up on an inspection report that you have to use a sump pump, or you have to use a pump in order to get the water out. So he wanted the window well drain cleared to ensure that it was that. Now, in most situations that I've come across, window wells are not necessarily going to clog up horribly unless the house is like super old. It's possible that it could happen, but typically if you look down in the hole and it's got a fair amount of rock, it's not necessarily that it's backed up, it's that there's just too much water getting into that pit. The window well itself is a low point, so you have to figure out a way to get the water to not go to that low point. So you have to run some tests. Luckily, when we got rained out of doing this job a couple of weeks ago and it was raining horribly, I was able to take a look at the pit while the rain was occurring to see what was going on. The pump was easily able to keep up with the water. It had nothing to do with the water with that. What I noticed though is that the gutter that is directly above that location was sagging. Not only was it sagging, but the water was just flowing over on the edge, and it was going straight down into the rocks that were surrounding the window well. And of course, the water is just going to go into that low point, which is the window well. While the pump was able to keep up with it, we're trying to eliminate the need for the pump altogether. So there's a couple different things we did. We dug out a lot of the stuff that was in the hole. We pushed the rocks aside, dug out the dirt, tried to find the actual drain. In addition to that, while we were digging, we actually found a couple of interesting things. There was a grate, but it was like a barbecue grate that was down there. Not sure what exactly it was supposed to be doing, but it was there. And we also found this massive patio stone that had the shape of a ladybug on it. And that was blocking, the bottom of the drain as well. So we pull that stuff out. We put, we put 2 bags of river rock down there, and then we tested it. In addition, we put a clamp, a repair clamp on the gutter. And once we put that on there, we were able to get the gutter to go back so that it's flowing towards the downspout, which prevents the water from overflowing directly in that spot. So we have tested to make sure everything is good to go. Now the problem is that the entire stretch of gutters has plastic clips on them. A lot of the clips are broke. I haven't seen this type of plastic clips in a while, but it's not ideal. Those clips over time, because it's plastic, just from the sun and the weight of the gutter, they crack. They just have a tendency to do that. It's just a plastic and it has a nail that spikes through it. But they break, and when they break, the nail's not holding anything. So we start testing it. As we test it, I'm running a hose up there. Obviously, I can only control how much water we have, but I'm running a hose. I'm noticing the gutters filling up. I can see the water going down towards the downspout, but it doesn't look like it's drained. So it turns out there was also a blockage where the downspout was at that end. The gutters themselves were not full. It was just there was a mud blockage right at the top of the downspout. So it's like a combination of a variety of different things. So we clear that. The water's flowing down perfectly where it's supposed to. It's sloped the correct way because we did that repair. And then we're also solving the problem of making sure that the drain itself doesn't fill up as easily. So it was a very roundabout way of getting it taken care of, but it all got taken care of for a series of small repairs that just could have become something pretty large. So that got taken care of. So those two things by themselves was $635. And that was the end of Monday. On to Tuesday, we go back to the customer who has the rental properties. This is his own house. He just needed a kitchen faucet swapped. That was pretty straightforward, $150. No issues when it came to that whatsoever. I wish every faucet repair was like that, where you just show up and it's just swapping it out and it's straightforward. It doesn't always work out like that, but he had some additional work he wanted me to look at. He had a big crack. It appears to be a settlement crack in his kitchen that he wants repaired. Unfortunately, I know my limitations when it comes to work like that, and that's not something that I'm taking on. Drywall work, one, I'm not in any way, shape, or form the best person to be doing it. Two, I've had horrible experiences with doing drywall and ceilings because the heat rises, the humidity level, it just doesn't dry very quick. And I have not had it turn out very well. Now, I've had jobs where it works and I just have to go back and keep going back, and I just don't like getting in those scenarios. So I just politely declined that work. He said that he had a commercial property that he wants me to take a look at up in the city. So I'm going to go look at that this week, see what actually needs to be done, because again, I don't have any confines of what actually he's wanting to have done there. So from there, we went over. So on Tuesday, it was me and just one of the helpers. And we went to the second location, which was a house that had, this is a porch. I think I talked about this before, but I'm calling it a porch enhancement. There's a bunch of different things, painting, there's flooring involved. There's a bunch of different things that are involved. And we need to get measurements, but also I wanted to walk through the estimate because I think that there was a slight confusion with some of the things, and I want to make sure the customer was on the same page. So that was pretty straightforward. It's just step one in a long process of one of the bigger jobs that I mentioned earlier. Next, we went back to the house where we did the basement demo a few weeks ago. I guess at this point it's been a month. We went back over there because the exterior door project that we had at that same location, the door finally came in. We were able to get the door, and that was an outbuilding that had a door that had basically fallen off its hinges because of how rotted it was, and he wanted a brand new door on there. I had preemptively ordered a door a while back from Menards. I made the mistake and the door was not the right size. When I showed up with the door and was ready to do it, found out it was the wrong size, pretty pissed about that. Menards has a restocking fee, which I did not know. While it wasn't a custom door, it was a custom order door. So they charged a restocking fee, which I had to eat, which sucked. It took me a little bit of time to actually find some place that I could source this door from that was the correct size. I was able to get it from Lowe's. It just took a little bit of additional time for them to actually ship it and get it to me. came, well, actually, it came in right before I went on vacation. So when I had the brief time in between the first half of the vacation and the second, and I was back in town, went and picked up the door, wanted to get that on the schedule right away. So that got done. That was pretty straightforward. The only difference is that you're not doing a lot of fancy trim. If you are looking at the after picture of the outside, you'll see that there's protector wrap over the wood that was there. That's because I'm trying to prevent the wood from rotting. It's not a typical, door installation, because basically it's corrugated metal, and they just cut out a spot so that they could frame out a very simplistic frame. I mean, it's literally just 2x4 and then a 2x4. That's it. It's not even like a normal frame for a door. And the previous door frame had rotted because it wasn't painted, it wasn't protected. So the new one needs to get painted, but I wanted to make sure that the framing for the door was semi-protected. And that's what the wrap was for. So while it's not cosmetically looking great as well as you would a normal door, the problem is that you're limited because it's not it's not on an actual wall like normal. So you kind of lose some of that cosmetic look by making sure that it's just protected. So that job was $1,495. Obviously, like I said, that included the door as well. So then that was the end of Tuesday. We jump over to Wednesday. I had the lit tip meeting in the morning. No real new developments from anything related to that. I did have to leave there a little bit early, and that was because I had a doctor's appointment. I regularly go into a podiatrist to have my feet examined. Not examined, I guess. I used to have horrible calluses on my feet. And I've been doing this for just over 2 years now, where like every couple months I go in there and he takes care of all the calluses on my feet so that I don't have issues with my feet. They were so bad at some point where I had cracks that looked like they went down to my bone because of how deep these cracks were. And now we're at the point where, like, other than just a really thick callus on my heel that has to just be slowly, scraped, my feet are actually in great shape. Wearing the proper shoes, it all makes a difference. And the thing is, didn't used to care about any of that stuff, and then at some point you realize you really got to start taking care of your health. I turned 40 this year. I got to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, especially when right now I'm the only one running the business, in the sense of I'm the only one who can actually do all this stuff. Get another tech, sure, I could get a tech out there to do some of the jobs, but a lot of this still relies on me. So if I don't keep myself healthy, the business can't be healthy. So just remember that. So anyway, we left. After that, I picked up my son, who was going to be working with me he's obviously, as I've said before, he's one of my helpers. He worked with me that day. We went to an existing customer that he actually contacted me last summer about this, but then put it off and just decided it wasn't worth it. And now this year he decided it was. But he had a thermostat installed. It was the newer Google Nest Pro thermostat. But when the entire unit got replaced by the HVAC company, they did not set up the Wi-Fi, so it never was fully set up. So he kept having issues where the thermostat wasn't working correctly. He was told that it was because it wasn't wired correctly. So what he told me was he needed me to replace the thermostat wire, which knowing his house, I knew exactly it wouldn't be too difficult. But then when we showed up, it turns out it was just because the thermostat was never properly set up, wasn't connected to Wi-Fi, was never set up in the NAP. It literally they had this massively expensive thermostat on the wall that couldn't do any of the features that it actually does. So we set that up. And then the other thing we had was there was a doorbell, or a Ring doorbell he wanted installed so that way he could watch his driveway. So that was pretty straightforward. No real hiccups there. The only hiccup was that the spacing for getting the Ring doorbell on, it was a little bit difficult, but we made it work. So that was $240. After that, we went to a new customer who contacted me the week I was on vacation. and they had shutters on the front of their house, and two of the shutters fell off during a storm. I see this happen a lot. Whenever somebody has shutter repair, it's always either one of two things. The shutter itself is just in disrepair and they want it replaced, or the fasteners, they break because of age, they get brittle and they just get worn out. I also have those here. I'll explain this a little bit in more depth. You see these fins on the fastener. Hopefully you can see that. The fins, they get worn down. You bang them in, they get worn down just from the flex of, think of it like the shutters being held like this. It's moving back and forth. And as it's moving like that, this is just getting flexed back and forth. So these get worn down. So you got to knock them back in place in the holes that are drilled into the brick in this case. So that said, it was pretty straightforward. I knew it was on the second story. I could not tell from the pictures that there was a weird overhang for the front door that we were going to have to go on, because I think the picture was like just of the shutters. It still was pretty relatively simple. We popped in the two shutters, made sure all the other fasteners were secure. There was 3 other fasteners that we found that had broken, so we just preemptively replaced those so that way they were taken care of. Outside of that, the one thing that was interesting about this customer is that they asked about the AI receptionist that I had and complimented and said it was better than one of the larger university hospitals that are in the area. Said that he talked to our AI and then shortly after was also talking to the AI receptionist for the university hospital and complimented ours because it did a better job. And I was surprised. I mean, I don't control any of that, but I'm happy that the service that I'm using is better than something that I assume a large corporation would be using. So that was interesting to hear. The other thing that was interesting was he also said that he's like, oh, do you want to know how I found you? And I was like, sure, I'm always interested in knowing how people find the business. He actually found us through ChatGPT. He asked ChatGPT for a handyman in the area or something like that, or said, hey, I have some shutters that need to be repaired. Who can I contact? And he said that we were one of the top 3 that popped up, if not the top one. He couldn't recall. But he said that because of our reviews, we were probably one of the highest rated ones that was on the list that ChatGPT had, which again, I'm not trying to make that happen. It's just that naturally happens by giving good service and getting good reviews. So that was good to hear too, is that one, we're popping up on that search aspect, because that was something that a couple weeks ago, during my business coaching call, they were making a big deal about how you need to make sure that your stuff is searchable for AI to find you. They don't use just Google to find you. They'll try to find other things. So it was good to hear that. So that job was, I think, $280. They gave a $20 tip, or it was somewhere in that neighborhood. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it ended up being $300. After that, we went to a new job. The family that we worked for with the young kids, they have a new list of stuff that they want us to take care of, but I need to get measurements for the doors. There's like 2 bifold doors and 1 other door that they want to get replaced. So we had to get the measurements for that. So that was the end of Wednesday. Moving on to Thursday. Thursday was pretty straightforward. My one customer who had me moving a bunch of stuff a while ago, the doctor, he had some water come into his basement from a specific point and wanted me to come over just to basically move some of the stuff higher up so that way they wouldn't have to worry about anything getting damaged. There's no immediate concerns with storms in the foreseeable future. However, while I was on vacation, there was a large rainstorm that came through the area, flooded a ton of people's houses. And my understanding from what I've been described is that there was about 5 inches of rain that fell in like less than 24 hours. And just when you put that much water on the ground, nothing can keep up. Storm sewers, they overflow. It's hard to keep up with that kind of stuff. So I can understand the concern. No question about that. I had another customer who asked me to replace a sump pump, but they wanted a very specific sump pump, and the sump pump I have to order. So their concern was that there was some rain in the forecast, and they were concerned that it would be a problem. Luckily, it's not. We're going to get over there and take care of it. But again, when everybody in the area is getting flooded, that's the first thing you start thinking about is, well, when is it going to happen to me? Don't get me wrong, I've wondered that myself. The stuff around my own house, I make sure that everything is that's not going to happen. I don't have battery backups installed in my sump pumps and my ejector pit, but that is something that is, when I get to that area of the basement that I'm remodeling, that is something that is definitely going to go in. But yeah, I mean, like, these are things that you just need to be aware of. I have all my downspouts routed through my entire yard back to the back of the property, so that way I don't have water at all around my foundation. But there's still things you have to pay attention to and keep up on. So took care of that. I didn't have any charge for that because, to be honest, he always has other things that come up. He has another project that he's paying for at another property that's almost like $2,000 that we're going to be doing here in a while. It's involving a battery backup, sump pump system. But then he also needs a couple of other things done at his property as well. So that's just one of those ongoing ones where we'll eventually bill him in the future. Next, all three employees met at the next job, which was, we had a brick mailbox the brick was slowly deteriorating and actually was starting to sink. And they want us to demo it and put in a simple post mailbox. This is just a post install with a sleeve kit for a mailbox. Relatively simple. The hard part was getting the old foundation for the brick mailbox dug up. So I rented a jackhammer and came out. The brick mailbox, surprisingly, I wish we tried to film a video. My employees, I said, we're gonna knock it over, and in general, they got a little too enthusiastic before I could get the camera set up. But basically, we could just push this thing over. And then it was just basically breaking it down to reasonable sized pieces so that we could get it in the back of the truck for disposal. Then I came with the jackhammer and literally jackhammered for like 2 hours, basically digging out the center of where we would need to get the new post set for the new mailbox. So we got down 2 feet. The foundation for the old mailbox is obviously still there, but it's basically the top of it's gone, and then the bottom is funneled down so that we could get the post in. So we put the post in, put cement in. It was fine. The after picture doesn't look great on the bottom, but the thing was that the customer did not want us to backfill it with dirt because they do not want to put grass there. And they want to put down a weed mat, and then they want to put down some decorative rock. So because of that, they specifically said, please leave space for that to happen. So we made sure that the mailbox was installed to the ground level, the sleeve that is. And then there's a space for the post, for the ground contact post. And then what would happen is you just basically go in there, backfill it maybe a little bit with miscellaneous rock that's not as expensive, put the weed mat down, then put your decorative rock down. Customer was very happy with how it all turned out. I know that picture it doesn't look great on the bottom, but that's exactly what they wanted. They gave a 5-star review because they were happy about the way it was exactly what they wanted. And honestly, I think they were more happy about just getting rid of the brick one because that was an eyesore to them. So that was taken care of. That job ended up being $12.50. And that was Thursday. Moving on to Friday, we go to the third property for that same person who had their property and the rental properties. Go back, I went out to take a look at what I was told was an electrical issue. Again, very little information, make do with what you can. Show up, turns out it was a light fixture inside of the master bedroom closet that was being reported as flickering. Now, obviously, because it just works out this way, I show up and it's not flickering at all. Nothing's wrong. I can't see anything. Mess around with the switch. Switch appears to be fine. No issues. Check the bulbs. The bulbs are fine. check the switch, everything was working perfectly as far as I could see. Take out the fixture just to check, the connections to see if there's any loose connections. Turns out the wires were reversed. The neutrals were connected to the hot wire on the fixture, and the hot wire was connected to the neutral line. Now, I'm not an electrician, and I am not one to sit here and say I know exactly what this is, but my understanding is that when you have those reversed, the fixture will still work, but when you use something like an LED bulb, it sometimes will create issues where the bulb itself will flicker, because while it will work with incandescent bulbs, I say this because and again, I don't know what I'm talking about here. I'm just saying what I think it is. You have the 2-prong plugs, okay? Now, if you don't have the plug where the one's bigger than the other and has to go in a specific spot on the outlet, you flip it and you plug it in, it does the exact same thing. It still gets power. So the idea is that you're not changing it. However, those plugs are associated with the lines going up to the fixture itself. One of those is a neutral wire and one of those is a hot wire. It's meant to go a specific direction. That's why plugs now have the slightly wider prong on one side and the shorter one on the other, so that they go in the correct spot. Didn't used to matter, but with stuff with electronics, it does matter. I believe that has something to do with the polarity, but again, I don't know what I'm talking about. So the whole idea is that when you have a light bulb like that and the polarity is reversed, what happens is it affects the electronics. So that's why you see flickering. That's why you see issues. And that's at least my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong. For those of you who know better about what I'm talking about, please leave your comments in the comment section below. I'd love to hear the actual explanation so that I could explain it a little bit better in the future. But fixed the wires, reversed them. It was fine, no issues. Everything still worked just as it was, but I know that it won't affect the bulbs the way it was before. So all of that got taken care of. That was $150. It was just basically a trip charge to go out there. I was also supposed to take a look at the shower. There was potentially covering the existing shower situation with a new shell. I can't do it because, one, that's not something I typically do, but two, it's not a common size I can just source from the store. And that's the biggest problem, is if I can't source something, I have to get something custom. That's not something that I'm going to be taking on. It's a weird shape because it's not just like a 1/4 inch off because of the tile. It's actually like 1.5 inches off, which is not the tile. It's just how they made it. So that's not something we could do. But after that, I was supposed to go to the apartment building that we've worked at in the past that had all of the water and the remediation issues, to start a new project. There was rain in the forecast, and by the time we would have gotten out there, the rain that was supposed to be in the forecast was going to be hitting like shortly after. And it was supposed to last for like 2 hours, which would have eaten up basically the biggest chunk of the working time that we had. One of the employees had to be out at a certain time, so I decided we weren't going to be going down there. Instead, we ended up just working in my basement on some of the projects that we've been working on down there when we have rain out days. That's not, like I said before, that's not related to the business. They're not technically working, they're not clocked in while they're doing that. It's just an opportunity for them to still make money just from me personally when we're doing the work in the basement. And that was Friday. So overall, the total for the week was $4,630. I felt like that was light throughout the entire week, but that's because there was just a lot of jobs with the smaller amounts. But we did have like the 2 bigger jobs with the mailbox and the exterior door. So not a bad week. I mean, it less than some of the previous weeks. Going back a month was the last time we had a week that was that low. But to be honest, it's still significantly higher than most of the other weeks that we had prior to the employees coming on. So can't complain in that regard. I did not actually have a lot of the employees working with me this week either. Like I said, Monday I had 2 of them. Tuesday I had 1 of them. Wednesday I had 1 of them. Thursday I had 3 of them. Friday, we technically for work, we didn't have any of them. So I mean, like, that cost that you have associated with those employees is not affecting, your bottom line either, because I'm trying to make sure that I have them when I need them. Coming up this week, we got to get one of the property turnovers that we have on our plate. We need to start working on that. One of the employees is going to be out for like 2 weeks at the end of the month. So I'm trying to get a bunch of stuff done so that I have that extra body, but also get things moving so that way we can focus on some of the other things. And like I said earlier, we're meeting some potential new properties that we're going to be working with in the future. So lots of things going on. Other business related things, the business coaching session this week had to do with hiring and the stuff specifically about how to onboard employees and interview. While it was great to hear, I've already done some of that. There was a couple of things that I pulled out of it that were interesting that will work. But yeah, outside of that, not a whole lot of other like business movement stuff. I've been trying to work with ChatGPT on like creating a financial SOP, or it's not really an SOP, but it's more of a financial operating system for the business, to dictate, when we look at raises, to dictate when we look at owner draws, figuring out ways of creating cash reserves so that we can get towards that idea of having a van that's built out for a tech, those kind of things, and trying to figure out that. And it started off as this like small thing of trying to get QuickBooks set up, and it's become this like massive thing that when it's all said and done, it's going to set us up in a very good way for the future. It just takes a lot of time to sit down and take care of that. So that's the only other thing that's been happening that happened this week. One of the other things I wanted to just quickly mention as something new, because I didn't think about this before, but every once in a while we get new tools. So new tools that we've gotten recently, an Milwaukee M18 bandsaw. This is specifically for a railing job that we've got where we're needing to trim aluminum railings to the right size. I have cut-off tools. I have metal blades for a circular saw, but I know that those aren't going to be clean cuts, and I want this to be clean cuts. So we have the bandsaw. That'll obviously get some use, but it'll be occasional use. I also have a metal circular saw because they had a promotion for the two together. That's probably going to get used way less, but we have it. I also bought a new circular saw recently because the circular saw that I had from ages ago is a Milwaukee brushless, and I think it's because I bought a Milwaukee brushless kit, but it wasn't a fuel and it wasn't like the better version. And I've already replaced the drill, the driver that were, I think, from the set, and then the circular saw, I think, was just another one of the pieces. I'm trying to remember what else came in that set, but I don't think there really was anything else. But the circular saw that I had sucked. It could barely cut through anything. It had nothing to do with the blade. I had changed out the blade multiple times. It just was not very powerful. And just to put in perspective, the new one that I bought, I took a 2x4, I went zip, 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 and it was night and day. It was very clear that I should have done this a long time ago, but that's the thing. So those are the three big tools. That's the only tools recently that we've bought. There's a bunch of batteries recently that I bought as well, and occasionally the batteries come with like a free tool. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the circular saw was either free or came with free batteries, one of the way. But I got batteries in addition to the circular saw when I bought that one, and the latest set, the bandsaw and the metal circular saw, those came with batteries as well. But I believe the circular saw was free and you were just paying for the bandsaw. So I try to look for promotions for that kind of stuff as well, because that stuff saves you good money. Especially for some of these tools that you're not using as often. Why not get something for free out of it? I've gone the route of, in some scenarios, taking certain items that we don't use very often, and I'll just figure out ways, not selling something brand new, but like if it's something like, for example, that circular saw that I hated, I threw it up on Facebook Marketplace for 50 bucks. And someone bought it pretty quickly. The one thing about Milwaukee stuff is that it typically sells. I had a bunch of excess pack out stuff that I was trying to thin out for stuff that I didn't use and then buy the correct stuff that I would use properly. Stuff sold super quick. It just, Milwaukee stuff sells really well, especially if you price it right. And I'm not looking to make a ton of money on it in a lot of cases. I'm just trying to make some money, or, you know, get something for it so that I can apply it towards something else. So that's been the business. So that's been this week in the field with the Handyman in the field. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening if you're listening to this as a podcast. If you're not and you don't want to see my beautiful face, you can listen to this on YouTube Music. Just search This Week in the Field and it'll pop up as a show, and you can just listen to the recaps of the week. In addition to that, be sure to check out our videos on Thursday. Those videos dive into a variety of different topics, including, recently I did a truck tour of the rest of the stuff inside the truck to correspond with the other two videos I did about the tools that I constantly have with me. We talk about some of the jobs that will actually make you some money, the ones that are, you can be very efficient and do a lot of them. So be sure to check out those videos. Those release on Thursday. In addition to that, subscribe if you're not subscribed. That way you get those, you get the videos and you see the new videos that we release. Every Monday and Thursday is when we're releasing new videos. And then in addition to that, like the video because it does help push it towards other people who are, who might enjoy this content as well. Share it with other people and leave comments. Recently, we've gotten some more comments. I appreciate those. I'm always making sure that I'm reading those comments and applying or replying to them and answering any questions that you guys have. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching This Week in the Field. We'll see you guys next time.